Hey, everyone. Anthony Fantano here, internet's busiest music nerd, and you know who it is, coming back at you with another installment of the Starter Pack series, Golden Age Hip Hop Starter Pack. Keep in mind, just like our death metal video, which we will link you to at the end of this video, we're actually probably going to do a nice little playlist of this series. Getting winded here. I'm so excited. It's actually more like hyperventilating. All right, sorry, I'm done being cringy. I apologize. Listen, this is not a list of the best hip-hop records of the 80s or anything like that. This is just a list of albums to get you started to try out this sound, try out this style, get into it. You know, I didn't cover every major artist in this era. I'll tell you right away that I did not mention and do highly recommend, if you listen to all of these, that you hear out some LL Cool J, some Boogie Down Productions, KRS-One, that sort of thing. So I didn't get to everybody, obviously. And the thing about albums in the earliest days of hip hop, like, they don't paint a full picture. Because in the early days, some of the biggest hip-hop most significant pieces of hip-hop music were just singles, you know? Planet Rock, The Message, Grandmaster Flash, you know, that sort of thing. So, you know, if you want a fuller picture, you know, you got to go back and listen to those early classic singles that sort of set the stage, set the tone. You know, I would say Sugar Hill Gang, if not for the fact that you all have probably heard that song, you know, a million times over by now. But you know, having said that, so here's an array of albums that I am recommending to you guys, and let's get into it. These will all be listed down there in the description box. Let's kick it off with Mr. Slick Rick, The Great Adventures of Slick Rick. Obviously an East Coast MC, as pretty much everybody in this list will be, you know, sorry to the West Coast, sorry to the South, but, you know, we're talking New York here. We're talking Golden Age, you know, let it be. Slick Rick, immaculate, fantastic storyteller. Songs like Children's Story still today rank as some of the best hip-hop songs of all time. Has been copied over and over and over, or, you know, or at least referenced numerous times throughout many a hip-hop album to come after it. You know, it's a genius track, and there are many other genius tracks on this thing. You know, also recommend this album to anybody who says, you know, oh, today hip-hop is so vulgar. Because Slick Rick was pretty nasty, you know, at least on a couple tracks on this thing. You know, but he was lyrical, again, and primarily a fantastic storyteller, great sense of humor, lots of attention to detail, obviously sort of a point or a sort of a message in every single track. You know, whether or not you agree with the message or the message is really all that helpful or wholesome, you know, I think is, you know, dependent upon the song. But Slick Rick, fantastic storyteller, solid flow too. He's not one of these, you know, super old school rappers from the early 80s. I mean, obviously, you know, he had been at this for a little while before he put this album out, but his style had evolved and progressed to the point where his rapping here is much smoother. This is not your stereotypical, I'm sitting on a hat, I'm sitting on a cat, I'm sitting on a mat, I'm sitting on a bat, you know, that sort of thing, you know, just the one single syllable rhymes and, you know, very basic rhyme structures. Like, you know, he had a lot going for him, and I think part of what sort of pushed him to rap with the complexity for his time that he did was that he wanted to tell these very detailed stories. So that caused him to sort of, you know, progress his style and push his rapping ability to sort of, you know, again, tell these stories that he tells on this record. Next, got to give a shout out to the self-titled Run-D.M.C album. This came out in the mid-'80s. Beats are very rickety on this thing, but still, Run and DMC have an incredible amount of, I guess, chemistry. You know, it's one of these early hip-hop acts that sort of emphasized, you know, this kind of shouty flow, this shouty delivery with lots of moments where, you know, they're trading bars off, and then one member will sort of emphasize the voice or a lyric from another member by repeating the entire lyric or a single word, you know, sort of emphasize that ba, ba, ba. You know, it's actually really, still to this day, pretty energizing, pretty exciting, pretty electrifying. This is one of those 80s hip hop releases that, in my opinion, I mean, it's not their most smooth and well produced release. I mean, just a few years later, I think the production value increased exponentially. But I'm sort of recommending this to give you kind of a picture of how kind of rudimentary and bare bones some of this early hip hop stuff was, and Run-D.M.C isn't even, as stripped back as some of it got. I'm actually trying to recommend this to show you that despite the fact that it was kind of bare bones, there's still like a hard groove to a lot of it. There's still a very tight and a very energizing funkiness to it. And there's like this incredible electrifying energy to the vocal performances on this thing. Lyrics are really catchy, hooks are really catchy, a lot of rock music sampled throughout some of the tracks here. Overall, good album, very fun performances, very entertaining record. Okay, Public Enemy. While this record came out in the 80s, it was very much the late 80s, and in a lot of ways was kind of I guess, the shape of rap to come. Because the vocals and the rapping from Chuck D were really aggressive. The production handled by the Bomb Squad was really noisy and chaotic and very detailed and very layered. There are some elements of the production of this album to this day. It's sort of a mystery as to how they did it because, that's just how crazy and off the wall and sort of cutting edge some of the production on this album was. Because, again, it was so nutty. It was so detailed. This was like, an altogether new thing to have beats that sounded like this and beats that sounded like what the Dust Brothers did on Paul's Boutique. The production on this thing, again, insane. But it's not just really about the beats on this thing. Chuck D, super politically charged lyrics, really thoughtful lyrics, incredibly captivating, very authoritative MC. And Public Enemy, given their image here, given the logo, given, just the name Public Enemy, of course, what they're rapping about is very, I guess kind of anti-system. It's very edgy. It's very angry. It's very aggressive. It's very revolutionary. It's very much the tone of a lot of Public Enemy's music. And this album, in my opinion, is really kind of the peak of that message, the peak of the band's talent, the peak of their songwriting ability. I mean, if you want, you could go back a few years and listen to Yo Bum Rush the Show, their debut. It's pretty good. It's not as good as this. In a lot of ways, it is much more rudimentary. The songwriting is not so much there. Chuck D's flow is not as smooth there as it was here. Flava Flav is not quite as exciting a hype man there as he is here. This is really where Public Enemy really came into their own. And despite the fact that, again, it's kind of a bit of a shape of hip hop to come kind of thing, I do want to sort of display that there was a lot going on in the 80s. There was a lot of progression from the early 80s to the late 80s. And a lot of people consider the early 90s to sort of be part of the golden age anyway. So it's not like even sort of throwing in some late 80s releases is necessarily a bad thing, but I'm just sort of digressing. Paid in Full, Eric B. and Rakim. Fantastic album, fantastic record. I'm not really sure what else to say beyond that. I mean, there's a lot of great songs on here, a lot of great hooks. I guess what I have to emphasize, just like anybody would if bringing up this album, is that Rakim was truly a cutting-edge MC. And, there's really no bones about that. His flow for his time period was incredibly smooth and cool and laid back. There wasn't kind of this clunkiness, this awkwardness that at the time maybe wasn't apparent, but in retrospect, when you listen to rap in the 2000s and the 90s today and then compare it to some of the flows you were getting in the 80s, this was the flow. Everybody who heard it does know, that sort of thing. Rakim was, really kind of his own animal, and because of that uniqueness of his flow and his style and his delivery, he influenced so many people that came after him. I mean, not even people that came after him. He influenced his contemporaries, people who were rapping in the same time period that he were biting him and copying him. The word I want to say is unashamedly, because the ideas that lyrical and rhythmic ideas that he came up with and that he delivered on this record and their following record too, were so great and so universal and so necessary to copy in order to bring the genre forward. So, you gotta listen to this because, Rakim, again, super cutting edge. And if not for his rapping, if not for his rap style, hip hop would sound completely different today. Not to say that it would just get stuck in the 80s and it would just sound like that forever. But he influenced a lot of people. And he progressed the genre in a way that very few other artists did. Moving on to De La Soul's first project, 3 Feet High and Rising. De La Soul obviously considered a part of the whole native tongues movement. And, you're talking about raps that are cool, they're laid back, they're jazzy, a lot of them are Afrocentric, socially aware and conscious, De La Soul, though, sharp sense of humor. Some of the skits on this thing are gut-bustingly funny or silly or ridiculous. Maybe with so much time passing after this album, some of their shine has sort of been lost. But still, the rap tracks are incredibly entertaining, very smooth flows, very funky, lots of personality. De La Soul had an incredible amount of personality for their time period. Really, a lot of the time I would say that was kind of the selling point of De La Soul, that, the lyrics and really sort of the whole tone of this album and a lot of their projects to follow, kind of had a weird tongue-in-cheek kind of character to them. They were kind of wild. They were kind of weird, very playful. And so I guess that's, just kind of a, it doesn't border on comedy hip hop or anything like that. But, they definitely had a strong sense of humor that came out in their music, so I guess it's kind of, a good thing to display that, hip hop wasn't just kind of this super gritty, super serious thing, as you may know it today, super aggressive, super violent, super mad, super in your face. These guys, sort of had a different sort of tone about them. And, in the future, when sort of hardcore hip hop rose up and became more, aggressive and violent and in your face, they were like kind of poking fun at that a little bit too, because that was just totally not their vibe. That was not their sound. That was not their style. And 3 Feet High and Rising, highly recommended. And finally, I will recommend Beastie Boys, Paul's Boutique. I don't know how much I really need to say about this project because I kind of mentioned how fantastic and amazing the production is when I was talking about Public Enemy earlier. Most people have heard the Beastie Boys. Their lyrical and their vocal style has not really changed that much over the years. And you could make the argument that, with Paul's Boutique, it was really kind of at its peak. Paul's Boutique, Ill Communication, that sort of whole era in their career. And I like License to Ill, but it's not their best album, in my opinion. And I guess if you want more of a purist earlier mid-'80s hip-hop sound, you would probably want to go listen to that instead, their debut, License to Ill. Even though there were a lot of things about that album that to a real hip-hop purist might sort of, turn them off a little bit because there are a lot of rock samples. It was very much a rock album that was kind of marketed to white high school kids and college kids and that sort of thing. So, maybe, but the thing is, Paul's Boutique was so good that even Beastie Boys contemporaries and, the hip hop fans that may have dismissed them out of the gate had to kind of take them seriously because this was a really good, very good album. Again, even if it is a lot like, that Public Enemy album, Nation of Millions, that it was just kind of like more of a shape of rap to come sort of thing because the samples on this thing, the beats, the production on this thing were just so ahead of the curve. And so Beastie Boys, Paul's Boutique, 3 Feet High and Rising from De La Soul, Eric B. and Rakim, Paid in Full, Public Enemy, It Takes a Nation of Millions, Run-D.M.C. Self-Titled, and Slick Rick's The Great Adventures of. This is my starter pack for you guys. So if you're looking to get into golden age hip-hop, 80s hip-hop, listen to these albums. Obviously, there are more to try out, more to listen to beyond this, but these should get you started. And if you're going to, and once you listen to these albums, you could start or sort of have an interesting conversation sort of on this style, on this sound, on this era. Maybe not a full or complete conversation, but, you know, if you're talking with somebody and Slick Rick comes up, Run-D.M.C comes up, Public Enemy comes up, you're going to know what's going on, you know. And that's going to be it, guys. Thanks for watching. Hopefully you take these recommendations, give all these albums a listen, and I will catch you in the next video. You're the best forever. Oh, yeah, and here's the death metal video. Next time I head over here, check that out, too. Woo!